everybody, it is the crop rockin', nickelback poppin', curls for all the girls, the Terminator, Sam Beal, as seen on Impact Wrestling, and you are listening to The Final Count. Hey everybody, Anthony Corelli here, formerly known as Santino Morella, and you are listening to The Final Count.
Hey, it's Eddie Guerrero, voice of the Valley from OVW, and you're checking out The Final Count. Citizens, this is Super Z, and you're watching The Final Count.
That's right. It is that time again. It is time for The Final Count Spotlight. And on this episode of The Final Count Spotlight, I am joined by my guest. He is a former WWE referee, Jimmy Korderas. And here he is right now. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Final Count Spotlight. And I'm glad to have you joining me. So first of all, how's everything going with you?
Not too bad. Up here in Canada, we're finally getting our snow, which is a pain in the butt because at least when it's raining, you don't have to shovel it.
Right.
Now, snow is a different thing. So it's you have to get used to it again. Every year it's the same thing.
I hate snow. I can't.
Oh.
I hate driving it. Like if it's not on the road, then I'm good.
Right. But people always say, oh, you're up there in Canada. You should be used to it. It doesn't matter. You never get used to it.
Right. Exactly. And then Louisville weather, it's bipolar. We always say so. Yeah, you could go through literally all 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah.
So yeah. So getting into this, when did you decide to get into the pro wrestling business?
It's funny because it wasn't something I consciously decided to do. I was a huge fan growing up here in Toronto, and we used to get all sorts of wrestling on television. We got Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling from our Buffalo affiliate stations just across the lake. Obviously Maple Leaf Wrestling up here in Canada was huge, and we'd get AWA Wrestling. We got International Wrestling from Montreal. We had so many different options. We got All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver. On Saturday nights after Hockey Night in Canada, I would watch it with my dad and stuff like that. So International Wrestling from Montreal. I mean, it was a smorgasbord of wrestling, but I loved it. And when I got old enough to actually go down to Maple Leaf Gardens and watch it live, and I would go down and I'd bring a camera with me and take pictures because I managed to finagle what would be the equivalent of season tickets. So I was sitting second row ringside. Anybody who's familiar with Maple Leaf Gardens, there was that ramp that used to go from the locker room to the ring that was level with the ring. It was kind of unique in the time. And I would sit right beside that second row. So I would snap pictures of the boys when they'd be walking by and making their entrance and exits from the ring. And I would come back the next show because back in the day when you had to develop film, I would take it to a place called Direct Film up here in Canada. I don't think they still exist. But you would double your prints for $1. So you'd get a second print for $1. So I said, you know what? This is a good idea. I'll keep one set of prints for myself and I'll sell the second set when I get there. So I was selling pictures for $2 a pop.
Wow. Trying
to fuel my wrestling habit to pay for it. Right. And there was a fellow by the name of Elio Zarlanga. He was Jack Tunney's right-hand man, but he also took photos for the program and the guy in charge of doing it. So he catches me outside of Maple Leaf Gardens one day. I don't know who he is, right? It doesn't. So he comes up and he says, yeah, hey man, got some pictures there? I said, yeah. He says, can I see them? I said, sure. He says, oh, these are pretty good pictures. You selling them? I said, yeah. He says, how much are they? I said, $2 a pop. He goes, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean I can't do that? Who are you? So he tells me who he is. And I went, oh. Now I'm worried I'm going to lose my tickets. Like they're going to take them away from me and stuff like that. And he goes, you don't seem like a bad guy. Just don't do it right outside the building, right outside the venue. Go down the street a little bit, go down the block and nobody will bother you there. And after a little while, we became good friends. He says, you know what? You do take pretty good pictures. Maybe I could bring you on board as help me out, taking pictures for the program. And I thought, that's cool. So he says, let's go talk to Jack Tunney. So he brings me to meet Jack, and Jack comes up and he says, well, we don't need another photographer, but we'll find something for the kid to do. So that's when I got in, my foot in the door, being the guy who did the odd jobs, running around, running errands and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't something I actually planned to do, but one of those people who said, "Oh, I'd love to do something in the wrestling business."
That sounds so much like me, like because I'm not in the business really or anything. I've actually have been on some shows doing ring announcing actually two two, but I haven't really fully like gotten involved in it. But like just to help out and do something and be involved in it. That's me totally. And so I like that. Love to hear that. Now you mentioned being a fan, growing up and everything. Who were some people that you enjoyed to watch? And then when you got in the business, who were some inspirations that you enjoyed?
Oh man, where do I start? Because like I said, we used to get the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling from the Buffalo affiliate station here in Toronto, but also a lot of the talent that Jack Tunney used to bring in before they became exclusively WWF was from the Mid Atlantic territory. So I was a huge fan of guys like Oahu McDaniel, uh, Ricky Steamboat. I loved Ricky Steamboat. I thought he was amazing. But we'd also get guys like Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine and Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant and stuff like that. Those are the guys that I gravitated to. And as far as heels go, I really hated Sergeant Slaughter when him and Don Kernoodle were a tag team way back when. For all those people who are too young to remember this, go and Google it, guys, because these guys were amazing. And then when I first started working in the business and getting to know some of the talent, guys like Randy Savage, I thought were phenomenal. And people talk about Hulk Hogan and they say, well, he only had 3 moves. And I go, well, you know what? If you're ever around the guy and witnessed his aura while he was working in the ring, that's all he needed. It was amazing to see these people. And I found it interesting that like people say, well, he only had 3 moves. And I'm saying, but everything he did, each one of those 3 moves, people responded to.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And again, I was blessed, man. I got to go through, and Kurt Hennig was awesome.
Yes.
Very underappreciated when it comes to talking about some of the best talents ever. He was one that should be in the conversation as well. But I was blessed to know a lot of them, man.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely, for sure, agree with you. Now, who were you trained by as far as refereeing?
Oh, up here, there was the senior official at the time was John Bonello. He was a former worker. He used to be pretty much an enhancement guy very early on when WWF started coming up to Canada, because they would come to Maple Leaf Gardens every 3 weeks, but on the Mondays after, on a Sunday. They would always run Sunday. And Mondays they would do Brantford, Ontario, which is about an hour and 15 minutes at the time away. Now with traffic, forget about it. It's like 3 days. But they would run and tape Wrestling Challenge, WWE Challenge, in the Brantford Civic Center, and tape 3 weeks worth of television. And there he became a referee, and pretty much the main referee with Wayne Cashman and some other guys. And so those were the first guys I had contact with. But Dave Hebner became my mentor. Dave was the senior official at WWF at the time. And once I realized, hey, I got to start asking questions and figuring out how this works properly, Dave took me under his wing, and it was really, really helpful. And the boys were too, because they understood that I was just young and green and learning. So they weren't upset when I was making mistakes. They would talk to you and say, hey, they'd pull you aside and say, you know what, when this situation happens, here's what you need to do. But as far as, and Timmy White, of course.
Yes. Timmy White. Oh, God rest his soul. I actually got the pleasure of meeting him at a Seth Rollins signing when he was an agent. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I got to meet him, and that was really cool. As far as that training and learning from everyone, and having people come to you and kind of show you if you messed up, where you made a mistake. I'm sure you definitely learned from that over that time and that training. And so, that's really cool. Do you remember the first match that you refed? And if so, what was that like?
I actually do. I don't remember a lot of things from back then, but there's certain things like the first time. For me, it was up here in Newmarket, Ontario, in Canada. Um, when it was decided, Pat Patterson was the one who really said, Jimmy, go get yourself black sneakers, black pants, a blue shirt, and a black bow tie. Carry it with you all the time because we're going to start using you as a referee. And I said, cool. And I didn't know when it was going to happen because nobody said anything. So I was also on the ring crew. I was setting up the ring and carrying my ref gear with me. And at this show in Newmarket, Chief Jay Strongbow was the lead agent. And he comes up to me, he says, Jimmy Jam, he says, you got your ref gear with you? And I said, yes, sir, Chief, I do. He says, well, put it on, you're reffing tonight. And I went, okay. Like, what am I supposed to say? I'm not going to say no.
Right.
Yeah. He says, you're reffing SD Jones versus the Red Demon, who is Jose Luis Rivera. Mm-hmm. He says, get with them. They'll tell you what you need to know. And I said, okay. So SD and I were really close. And I said, SD, I got some good news and some bad news. He says, oh, cool. What's the good news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. He says, oh, that's great. He goes, but what's the bad news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. I have no idea what I'm doing. He says, okay, I'll tell you what. He says, stay close to me during the match. I'll talk you through it. So he got me through the match. I was nervous as hell. I can't imagine what it looked like because they didn't tape the matches back, the house shows back then. But he took me aside afterwards. He said, for a first time, it wasn't all that bad, but here's what you need to do. And but the main thing you need to do is go start talking to the vets, the referees. Ask them questions. Ask them to watch your matches. Ask for any feedback and any advice they can give you. And always be a sponge. He always said, you're going to find out that you're always learning, regardless of how long you're going to be doing this, hopefully for a long time, he said. But however long you're going to be doing this, always be a sponge because you're always going to learn something new. You're never going to know it all because it changes. Everything changes.
Yes, and that's a really good advice right there. I like hearing everyone's first match, what that experience was like. They're always so interesting. So I'm glad yours was, went well. From what it sounds like it went well, and so I'm glad yours went well. And even if like you said, he told you what you did wrong with it or what mistakes you might have made, and you learned from it. Now, this next question, it's one that I ask everyone that comes on. And I know it's something, you've had numerous matches that you've worked and been that third man in the ring or however if it's a tag match, fifth man or something like that, So if you could pick 3 matches that you have reffed in your wrestling career as your top favorites, what matches would you pick?
Wow. Obviously, I have to put in there Edge versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 24 because it's the main event of WrestleMania, and who does it get any bigger than that? And also being requested for that match by Edge and Taker, which was a big deal. I wasn't originally scheduled for that match, and they asked me to have me referee that match, which was a huge honor. Another one which doesn't get talked about enough was I refereed a match at SummerSlam. It was the opening match, Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio, which a lot of people to this day say is the best opening match ever in a SummerSlam. Those guys just had this chemistry. It was amazing. And I haven't had the chance to watch it back recently, but I do have flashbacks of it. And speaking of Kurt Angle, I'll put number 3 in there. Him again with Eddie Guerrero.
Yes.
It was a TV match. We did it for SmackDown in Chicago. Some of those matches are just, they're ingrained and you remember them. And those are 3 that really stand out for me.
All right. That's awesome. I love that you were able to name off those 3 right there, especially WrestleMania. Like you said, that's the main event of WrestleMania. So, and then on top of that, Edge requesting you to be the referee for the match. That's really says something. And then you have also the iconic moment of, I think that was the first time that we ever got to see Charles Robinson do the long ramp run down.
Yeah. It was amazing. And no one else could have done it.
Yes.
No one else but Charles could have done it. That was like 75 yards down that ramp.
Yeah.
And it's downhill. And anybody who's been running downhill knows that any slight slip and you continue downhill even though you're not running, you know.
Right. I know after he did that year, I was like looking for it, like, oh, I hope Charles does the run. Anytime a ref takes a bump, I'm like, oh, come on, please, Charles Robinson, come on down.
But it's like it was an iconic moment for a referee. No, no matter who does it afterwards, it's never going to be the same, because that one will always stand out as the best referee run-in ever.
So true. Now, what made you? I know you said you weren't. It wasn't forced upon you, but it kind of fell into your lap, for lack of a better word, or lack of a better way of saying it. What made you decide to, instead of being a wrestler, being a referee?
It's always in the back of your mind. You see these larger than life superstars in the ring, and you're wondering, oh, how cool would that be if I can do this as well? I'd love to do something like that. But like I said, it wasn't something that I set out to do and said, yes, I got to be a wrestler. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I had to be a part of this business. I wanted to be a part of this business because I loved it so much. And again, I wasn't sure what role I would have in it. And when this opportunity to referee came about, I said, you know what, this is it. I knew this is what I wanted to do, because I wasn't actually in the ring as a wrestler, but I'm in the ring being a part of it. And even though, you have duties behind the scenes and there's backstage stuff that you can do, being there and in it and a part of that, the entire presentation of putting a match together and being a part of that. And of course, not being a focal point, because it wasn't about me trying to be hey, look at me over here, because the referee, his job is to be invisible until you need to be visible, but you're the conduit that helps tell the story that the talent is trying to tell, and not be a part of that story. Unless there's some little thing that involves you, but that's just part of their story. Again, it's not about you. But so I was fine being that background player, but the fact that I was there was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Exactly. Now, how does your time in WWE come to be?
Well, that was it. That's where I got the foot in the door, because when I started working for Jack Tunney in the Toronto office, he was the Canadian arm of the WWF at the time.
Oh, okay.
So technically speaking, working for Jack meant I was working for WWF.
Right.
So that's how I got my foot in the door with WWF. And of course, when they would come up here at the time every 3 weeks, so I got to see the Pat Pattersons and the Jack Lanzes and the Hulk Hogans, and got to know people like Andre the Giant, and which was like, holy mackerel, Andre the Giant is actually buying me a beer. This is cool. You know what I mean? So right. I got to get to know the boys, and they accepted me, which was kind of cool. I felt accepted almost from the get-go. I guess they knew that I wasn't going to be some sneaky little guy trying to run to the sheets and give away secrets, so to speak. So I don't know what it was, but like I said, I got accepted pretty early into the locker room, which is kind of cool.
There you go. Can you talk about the WWE strike WWE referee strike in 1999, which you did not participate in, and ended up being attacked by the striking referees at Unforgiven that year?
Yeah, that kind of fell into that one, because at the time I was getting married. I got married in September of that year, September 5th. And I'd gone to JR, and I said, he was head of talent relations. And I said, JR, I'd like to get a couple of weeks off for the honeymoon, if that's possible, because, it was hard getting time off back in those days. And he said, yeah, is 2 weeks cool? I said, yes, sir. 2 weeks is perfect. Thank you so much. So I left for my honeymoon, and they hadn't started that angle yet. And while I was away, I didn't watch any wrestling because I wanted to stay married, first of all. So when I got back, everybody's filling me in on what was going on, that the referees went on strike, protesting against abuse they were taking from the wrestlers and all this stuff. And they wanted safer working conditions and all this kind of thing. And, as walking around the locker room, and everybody's like, hey, and then I eventually ran into Hunter, and Hunter says, he had his own nickname for me. He says, hey, Corduroy, welcome back. How does it feel to be out of a job? Ha, ha, ha. And I said, well, Hunter, I can't afford to go on strike because I just got married. So as a joke, I said that, and he laughed for a second. He went, huh? oh, wait a minute, come with me. I went, what? He said, come with me. So I go with him, and he said, walks up to JR, and he goes, JR, he says, Korderas has a great idea. And I'm thinking, I do? He said, yeah, he'll be the only regular referee who doesn't go on strike and crosses the picket line with the Tom Pritchards and the Harvey Whipplemans and all these guys. And then that'll lead to eventually something down the line. We'll figure it out. And I said, okay. And that's how it came about.
Wow. That's so cool.
Just me trying to be funny. I don't know
Right.
how funny it was, but I was just trying to be funny, and it just sparked an idea in somebody.
I love how Triple H took it like that. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
What are some gimmick matches that you have enjoyed being the referee for?
Ooh, the TLC matches, because especially the ones with the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian, those were amazing. All the TLC matches with them three, I was honored to be there ringside as part of the referee crew for those. And I know people say, well, what are your duties there? I said, your main duties is to make sure everybody's okay. Mm. You know what I mean? That's what you got to do. And those matches were grueling, and some of the punishment these guys were taking was incredible, but every match they had raised the bar just that much more. Yes. Culminating in that one at WrestleMania 17 that they had, the infamous spear when Jeff was hanging from the belts up in ringside and Edge caught him coming off that ladder. Iconic moment, which everybody remembers. Other matches, I used to have fun with these strange false count anywheres matches where you're going all over the building because you never know where you're going to end up. I remember doing one with the ladies actually one time. It was they were fighting in the back and they ended up in the men's room, which was a weird. I know people are saying, "What do you mean they ended up in the?" It was a weird kind of thing, but I found it funny. I don't know. Some people might not, but I thought it was hilarious. But those are kind of like the fun ones.
Definitely. It's always cool, to hear about gimmick match experiences and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So my father was the one who actually got me into wrestling. Well, he actually took me to my first wrestling shows. Mm-hmm. And he was a big fan growing up. He no longer watches wrestling. He thought that with me it would just be a phase, but no, it's not a phase. Mm-hmm. Wrestling is a passion to me. And being a fan of it is a passion and everything. So his favorite wrestler was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Oh. And so I just wanted to know, do you have any stories on working with Stone Cold that you could share?
Oh, man. Steve was awesome. One of the favorite memories was it was almost like an honor to get a Stone Cold Stunner from Steve, and everybody wanted to take one, including the referees. They were all hoping like, oh, I hope they do something with the referees, and everybody wanted to go, I want to be the guy. I want to be the guy kind of thing. So they did this one scenario where Steve was stunning everybody from Vince to the agents and everybody in the ring, and the referees, they said they're going to feed in one at a time and everybody's going to take one. So I'm like, okay, this is the coolest thing ever. So for me, it was like, I think I was the last referee to get into the ring and take one. And it was like, okay, I'm laying there selling and I'm going, you know what? This is the coolest thing ever. I got this. I get to say I took a Stone Cold Stunner.
Right. Oh my gosh. That is cool. I love that. What match, looking back, would you say was your most stressful match? And then on the other side of that, what would be your most stress-free match?
You know what? Stressful match. I'm going to say the one with Edge and Undertaker at WrestleMania because it is the main event. So I was stressing about that because it wasn't that I wasn't confident in being able to do my job, but it's WrestleMania. It's the main event. It's Edge and the Undertaker. Undertaker was our locker room leader. You know what I mean? And really quickly, not because he appointed himself as the locker room leader. The locker room appointed him the leader. They anointed him. It wasn't like he took over the job, but so I added extra pressure that I wanted to be there for them and make sure I do the job right for them. All right. So, the night before I had trouble sleeping, we're in in Orlando, and I'm walking around in, was it Tampa or Orlando? No, see, now I'm confused. I know it was
think it was
Florida.
Orlando.
I think it was Orlando, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm walking around the hotel outside at about 2:30 in the morning because I'm just wired. I can't get sleep. And I ran into Ken Anderson, Mr. Anderson, and he's going, "What's wrong?" I said, I'm just wound up. I can't get any sleep. I'm so nervous about this." He says, "What are you nervous about?" I said, and so I explained it to him, and he says, "Well, you got this, man. Don't worry about it." And he said, and he sat down, had a nice little chat with me. He calmed me down. I said, "You know what?" He says, "Have confidence in your work, because they do, or else they wouldn't ask you to do it." I said, "I guess, but still, I want to, I want to do the job properly." And, but he was a great help. Ken was awesome. And I know there are other matches where you talk about stress, but that one there, because it was the main event, was the most stressful for me.
There you go. What do you have any that was like just went off as a piece of cake, or
Oh, almost pretty much anything with Eddie.
really?
Eddie was so easy to work with, because once you got in a groove working with Eddie a few times, you kind of almost know how his thought process was.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would go into a match, and if I had Eddie's match, I'd ask him, "Eddie, what are you guys doing tonight?" And he'd say, "Okay, the finish is this. Is there anything else I need to know?" He says, "No, you got it. Don't worry about it." He wouldn't tell me anything else during the match. And he says, just react accordingly. That was it. And normally some people would say, "Well, now what do I do?" But with Eddie, he put me at ease. You know what I mean? It was kind of like I felt like I didn't have to worry about where I needed to be or what I needed to do, because, you develop that symmetry, so to speak. He was one of those guys that I naturally got. Edge also. Anything working with Edge was easy, except for the one at WrestleMania.
Right. Speaking of Eddie, do you have a favorite Eddie moment that you got to share with him?
Oh my goodness. There's plenty of them. One of my favorites, actually, trying to make a long story short, was we had a lot of fun at house shows. The live events were a lot more fun, because it wasn't the stressful TV days where, you have 8 minutes, you got to hit your times and all this stuff. There was a little more freedom to experiment and try different things. And there was a tag team match. It was during the Lie, Cheat, and Steal days, him and Chavo Guerrero, his nephew, versus Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. Mm. So, it was going to be a fun match to begin with. But during the match, unbeknownst to me, behind my back, I didn't see it, but in the corner where Eddie and Chavo were, one of the nuts on the turnbuckle that holds it in place was coming loose. And I didn't know this. But Tony Chimmel, for once, noticed something that needed to be addressed. He used to not only do the ring announcing, he also was ringing the bell but he used the wrench that we used to tighten those nuts to ring the bell with. He didn't have a hammer. That's what he used. So he got up from his chair and he started tightening the nut. And Eddie was right there, looks down at him. And this, I found out later, Eddie says to him, "Chimmel, give me the wrench." And Chimmel says, "What?" He says, "Give me the wrench." So he gave Eddie the wrench. What are you going to do? You're going to do what Eddie tells you to do, And Eddie says, "Chavo, bring Shelton into the corner. Bring him over here and take the ref." So Chavo brings him in the corner, and then he takes me, so I'm distracted. Eddie uses the wrench on Shelton. He's selling appropriately. Charlie flies in the ring, and I cut him off. And while I'm cutting off Charlie, Eddie hands Chavo the wrench, and Charlie's screaming, "Hey, Eddie's got something. Eddie's got something." And when I go back, Eddie says, "Check me," like the pat down, like to make sure you're checking him, see if he's got an object. Mm-hmm. I check him, and he says, "Go back to Charlie." So I go back to Charlie, and he says, "I'm going." He has nothing. I checked him out, and while this is going on, Chavo passes it back to Eddie, and Charlie's telling me, "But he passed it to Chavo." So now I go check Chavo. He doesn't have it, and this is going back and forth. And in the meantime, they're clubbing Shelton with this wrench every time. And then it got to a point where after this is going on for a little while, Chavo sneaks up behind me and he slips the wrench in the back of my pants and says, "Don't sell it." Like, don't, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know it's there. Right. So I turn around, and then Charlie comes flying in the ring, and he pulls the wrench out from behind, out of my pants. And I turn around and I catch him with him, and I start giving him crap over it. And it was like, and to this day, I recently talked to Chavo, and he just brought it up. Matter of fact, he says, "Do you remember the wrench?" I mean, to this day, he still remembers that spot. It's hard to explain, but if you would have planned that in the back beforehand, it wouldn't have come off as well as it did calling it out there on the fly.
Yeah.
It just worked, and see, that's the magic of a guy like Eddie, where you can make stuff like that happen. And of course, Chavo as well. And even Shelton and Charlie knowing enough to go along with it, that's the magic. That's the magic, man.
Wow. Yeah, that is definitely like some of the organic magic stuff like that makes it so good,
Mhm.
and everything and so entertaining. Any stories of working with DX that you can share?
Oh, working with them was fun. Mostly watching them is fun. You didn't have to worry about doing stuff in the ring with them. Um, I'm trying to remember. There was something that was going on with DX. Like, sometimes, like I said, some stuff I remember very well. Other stuff, because basically it was
There's so many moments.
over 20 years of memories. It's hard
Right.
to get everything. Bring it out to the front. You know what I mean? Because it's in there somewhere. But
Right.
uh,
We can come back to that.
yeah,
We can
we'll
come
come
back
back
to
to
it.
that one.
Yeah. So can you talk about Over the Edge 1999 and the Owen Hart tragedy
Mm,
that night?
yeah, that was the tough one. Um, you know, dealing with that. Everybody was dealing with that. It was terrible. Being there, um, as close to it as I was, it was a very difficult time to process for me because for those who don't know, I was in the ring when the accident happened, uh, and you know, people talk about should the pay per view have continued. Though it's easy in hindsight to say no, it shouldn't, and to this day, I honestly believe it shouldn't have.
Mm.
But again, I didn't know what was happening because I wasn't there at the building after the accident happened. I had left um, because I was in such a state where they had me checked out because I was really really stressed out to the point where like I having panic attack basically. But yeah, that was probably the worst night um, that I think a lot of us had to deal with. It was horrible. It was horrible being in the ring, being there, being so close to the accident happening because I didn't find out till the next day talking to Jerry Lawler that well, felt something brush by,
Mm.
and apparently it was his leg. That
Mm.
yeah, and it was yeah, it is tough. It's still to this day it is tough because you know we lost a friend, but a family lost a father, a husband, a son, and 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 you talk about some of the nicest people in the world, not just wrestling. I'm talking about in the world in general. Owen had a golden heart. He was incredible. He was a guy that lit up a locker room just by smiling. He had that kind of effect on everybody where he would walk in and everybody's having a rough day and everybody's moaning and bitching about whatever's going on. And, he'd walk in with a smile of his, pull a nice little rib on somebody and just have everybody laughing and at ease. And, you know, we were all blessed to get to know someone like Owen.
Definitely, definitely, and such a legacy that he left behind. Even
Mhm.
though with the tragedy, he still left such a legacy. Looking past the tragedy that happened, he still left
Mhm.
a legacy behind, knowing that he was someone that could, like you said, when he would be in a room, would walk in a room, make people smile. I've
Mhm.
heard numerous stories of the ribs that he would pull on people, and
Yeah.
just like it's it says a lot about him, about the man he was.
Right. When he pulled a rib on you, it was like a badge of honor.
Mhm.
He got me. Damn. Oh, it got me. But you laugh.
Right.
When he
right.
got you, you laughed. It wasn't like those, sometimes guys get a little carried away with ribs.
Mhm.
He never did. Everything was hilarious.
Love it. Love it. Love that he could bring joy to everyone.
Mhm.
Do you think the WWE should put a referee each year into the Hall of Fame?
It would be nice. It would be nice recognition for guys who don't get their flowers because the referees are an integral part of the wrestling match, of the performance. Yes, we're not the stars. We don't sell tickets. We don't put asses in seats, as they like to say. No one has ever paid to see me referee a match, except the only people that come to see me was my family, and they got comps. So you know what I mean. So, but it would be nice to get that recognition. I mean, I know Timmy White is in the Warrior wing. Teddy Long is in there, but Teddy Long is in there because of the many hats he wore.
Yes.
Not only as a referee, but as a manager, as a general manager of SmackDown. And I figured if they didn't put him in, they'd make somebody go one-on-one with the Undertaker. So, but it would be a nice little honor to recognize those that don't get the recognition that I don't know if deserved is the right word, but I think earned.
Yeah, of course. Like I'm like, they have, seems like every year they put a main, a main star in, and they
Mhm.
induct a tag team, a female star. Why not add a referee each year?
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. Speaking of the Undertaker, any stories working with Kane and the Undertaker?
Oh yeah. Doing those inferno matches and stuff like that. That's the scary stuff. You know what I mean? Those, the cell match. Yeah, Taker. Boy, I didn't referee the match itself, but I remember. Oh, the one I do remember is the cash in with Taker and Edge. Again, there's those two names again. Because it was a cage match that happened on SmackDown with Batista and Undertaker. And then afterwards, Mark Henry comes in, lays out Undertaker, and Edge had the Money in the Bank briefcase. He cashed it in that night, little things like that. Working with Kane, I remember he was wrestling. I don't remember who it was from the Brood, but he ended up, the Brood got involved. He ended up choke slamming all three of them and piling on top of each other. And then he went outside and got a gas can and a lighter and was going to light them on fire. And of course, I get in front and I'm trying to stop him. So he grabs me, choke slams me, and throws me on top of the pile and grabs the gasoline or whatever the hell was in that can and starts pouring it all over us. But he had great aim because that stuff was cold and he found a great spot to pour it. And I'm trying not to move because I'm trying to sell, and he's pouring the cold stuff all over my yam bags. You know what I mean? So I guess he was having fun, but it was so cool because as a referee working with those guys, you're not supposed to really back down from the talent, but they were the two exceptions to the rule. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You showed some trepidation. You didn't, totally cower away. Every once in a while you'd kind of take off from them, but they were the two exceptions to the rule where you'd show some trepidation. When you're enforcing rules, you'd be, you're careful, you're distancing yourself, you're not getting in their face. You'd never do. But it was fun working with those guys. Those guys were awesome.
Definitely. I tell you what, when I first started actually watching wrestling as a kid, I was probably 8 or 9. So this is before I went to my first show. And Kane, I remember, I don't know if it was Livewire. It's one of the Saturday shows.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was Livewire or something like that. Maybe Shotgun Saturday or something like that. It was a morning show. I remember that it was around the time when Kane and Undertaker broke Vince's leg. He had called him a handicap, and he was supposed to present the title to Austin or Yeah, to Austin, I believe it was.
Mhm.
And he ended up breaking. He gave the middle finger to Kane and Undertaker behind their back,
Mhm.
and Undertaker told him, "said You're gonna become the one that's handicapped if you
Mhm.
get out of line with either one of us." And I remember as a kid seeing Kane, especially Kane in that mask, that original mask.
Right.
Oh my gosh, he put fear in me. I was like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't want to be standing near him in that mask.
Mhm. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
So
see, that was the beauty of both those characters was they
yes,
looked intimidating and they were.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, what would you say makes really a great referee?
Oh, there's a lot that goes into it, but a great referee is someone who knows the role of a referee. The proper role is knowing everything from positioning in the ring, especially at TV, because TV is a different animal than refereeing in front of just a live crowd. Um, but also understanding your role is to make the illusion of the match feel like a competition, like you're actually enforcing rules, like for example a boxing match or even an MMA fight, whatever it is, any combat sport. You have to look like you're. It has to look real. It has to look authentic. Because when you start doing some hokey movements and maneuvers and selling and stuff like that, it kind of takes away from it. And you got to remember that you are not, like I said earlier, the star of the show. Yes, you're in the spotlight, but you're not the spotlight. The talent is the main priority. The talent, the story they're telling is the main priority. And you are that conduit that helps communicate, whether it's from the gorilla position when they're talking in your ear and telling them, say this, tell them this, this is how much time they got left, whatever the case may be. And you got to be that guy that communicates, but also communicate in a way that makes it look like it's in the process of doing your job as opposed to obviously going up to someone and saying, hey, 6 minutes to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's unfortunately I do see that sometimes today, and it I don't want to say it drives me crazy, but it does annoy me a little bit and go, come on guys, you got to be better than that. But like I said, the referee's job is to help perpetuate the story that the talent is telling. And I go back to WrestleMania 24, for example. Um, After the match, I got to the back. That I took a big boot and got taken out in the match by Taker. And when I got to the back, I ran into Ricky Steamboat, who was an agent, but he, you know, Ricky was awesome. And he says to me, he says, Jimmy, that boot looked great. Looked like you took your head off. I said, thanks, Ricky. I appreciate that. But how did the rest of the match look? Did you see anything there that was? And he said to me, you know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I was so enthralled in the story that they were telling in the ring. I was so invested in that I didn't notice you out there. And I said, "Thank you, Ricky. That was the best compliment you can give me." And when I tell other referees that, they don't look at me like, "What do you mean he didn't notice you out there?" I said, "That's the job.
hmm
You're there, and if the story and the people are invested in what they're doing, and you are doing your job correctly, you're not really noticed, but you're helping tell that story."
yeah,
If that makes sense.
exactly. Yeah, perfect sense. That's so true. Can you talk about working with JBL?
Oh my God. I loved working with JB. You know, when you talk about a true heel who really grasped the concept of being a heel, not like some people today, they they say they're heels, but they want to be this cool heel. JBL didn't want to be cool in the least. And I think he gets a bad rap sometimes for being uh, uh, for some of the things you hear about backstage and stuff like that. JBL was one of the fun guys to hang out with and to work with. And not only that, JBL was also a golf buddy because every once in a while, when we'd have a rare day off, it would be, especially on the SmackDown crew,
Mm,
it would be JBL, myself, sometimes Brian Hebner's uh, Booker. Booker loves the golf too. We'd find a course wherever we are, and we'd head out for the day and play some golf and have a few daddy sodas. But I love JBL. He was great.
Yeah, I agree with you. He really knew how to be a heel and really knew how to, uh, and still knows how to draw emotion out of you and make you
Hmm.
dislike him and hate him even. I mean, so yeah, definitely.
See,
Um,
that's the thing today. That's what people don't understand. If you want to be a heel, you want to be hated.
yeah,
The people are. It almost feels like sometimes people are afraid to be disliked.
yeah, no, I agree, and like because that's a good point because heels today, a lot of them, uh, for the most part on the indies, I believe, they will want to, they'll make you mad and get that heat, um, during a show, but then afterwards they're outside signing autographs.
Right.
Like, wait, you just did this, you got all this heat, now you're outside talking to fans, signing autographs. No, get back to being an actual heel anytime you're in front of fans.
See, there's a way you can do it because I know at indie shows, and I've done this before too, where you have your merch table.
Mm,
Even the heels have their merch table, but
yeah.
there's a way to sell your merch and still be that heel,
Hmm.
where you don't have to be a total sob to
Right.
everybody, but just be not nice and while you're signing an autograph and selling a picture or selling a t-shirt or a Funko Pop or whatever the heck you're selling, you know just be kind of snarky. You don't have to be like full on a-hole, you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Um, so what was your relationship with Vince McMahon and the rest of the McMahon family like?
Oh, Vince, I didn't really have a problem with Vince. I worked with him. He was the boss. It was basically him and I were boss employee kind of thing. I didn't pal around with Vince. I didn't chum around. Every once in a while, he'd be, fun to hang around with, from work capacity while we were working. And other times it'd be like, especially if you did something he didn't like, you heard it. And that was just part of Vince. But Shane and I got along well. Shane was like one of the boys. Shane was cool, and Stephanie too. Stephanie was really cool. Linda, not much interaction with Linda, but she was always very courteous, very polite when we would see her. But as far as who was I was got along with the best, it would be Shane and Steph. Because we were,
Shane.
I guess maybe because we were closer in age.
Right, right.
Maybe that was why. I don't know.
I know. I always loved Shane's matches. Shane, like you said, he's one of the boys. He, could steal the show like the best of them, like everyone on the roster. Like anyone you pair him with, he'd put on a good show. Him and Kane, him and Kurt Angle. I mean,
Yeah,
so many great
him
matches
and
that he's
yeah,
had.
him and Blackman. Him and
Yeah,
Blackman. I remember what too. Yeah.
yeah.
Bit of a
Yeah.
daredevil, but that's Shane.
That SummerSlam when he Blackman um hit him with the kendo stick and he fell from the staging. That
Yes.
was insane.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
um, how did you find out you were being released from WWE?
Oh, that's a bit of a story. See, and I was just in the process of being transitioned from referee to agent, kind of like Dave Hebner was. So they were starting to transition me over, and my father got sick. He was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So I requested some time off to go help with with the family because my mom was going through a rough time, and so I had taken some time off. And after a little while, the office decided they were going to, you know, um, do some budget cuts, as they call it. So I got a call, and they asked me when I was thinking of coming back to work, and I said I don't know because the situation is grave here. We don't. I have no idea what's going to happen here. So they said, so what we're going to do is we're going to furlough you for now for 90 days and give us a call back. And after 90 days, let us know what you think. If the door's wide open, right? And, the day after I had that conversation with the office, my father passed.
Mhm.
And that's when it kind of like, boom, hit me like a ton of bricks. And they were kind enough to pay me for those 90 days, and I didn't go back. It just, as much as I loved it, and I still do, I gave up so much family time, all those years on the road, and it's the family who suffered more. You know what I mean? So I thought, you know, I was satisfied with what I had accomplished in my career with wrestling, and it was time to give back to the family. So it
Definitely.
was. I know people say, "Well, why wouldn't you go back?" I mean, I said, as much as I love to, I love my family more.
That's that's the best thing, and I like that you said, you felt like you did everything you could accomplish.
Mhm.
That's what, you know, your family is the most important thing, but then you felt like you did everything felt you could accomplish
Mhm.
there, and you accomplished everything, and so like that says a lot too, right there, because uh, you know, you could be like, oh, I don't feel like I'm done, and
Well, it's the wrestling business. Never say never.
oh yeah, yeah, and you're still in the business too.
Mm.
Just in a
Yeah,
different way.
yeah,
So I mean,
exactly. Now you get to watch and talk about it.
exactly, exactly. And we'll get to that in a minute. Um, so let me just ask, and you kind of you've given, not kind of, you have given advice, but what is the best piece of advice you would like to give to, or you like to give to young talent just getting in the business? And most importantly, to someone who aspires to be a referee.
For any talent, regardless of it's a referee or a wrestler, whatever the case may be, listen to your veterans and seek out their advice. Always, yes, I understand people are talking about how the business has evolved. It's changing all over the place. But I like to, my analogy that I like using a lot, and a lot of people who know me have heard this before, is it's like the wheel. When the wheel was first invented, and it's like the wrestling business when it first came about, it was made of stone. And then it evolved. It became wood because wood was lighter and easier to transport and made the vehicle lighter too. And then it was rubber, then vulcanized rubber and run flat tires and winter tires and all this evolution of the rubber. But at the end of the day, the wheel is still round. So wrestling is the same way where you need to keep those fundamentals in play. And yes, you can change it up a little bit, but you still have to keep those fundamentals or else it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, heels and baby faces. And people say, well, the days of heels and baby faces is passe. And no, it's not, because this business is predicated on having good versus evil, antagonist versus protagonist, the whole bit. But as far as advice I would give, always put your heart and soul into it, but at the same time, ears wide open. At times, know when to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, yeah,
And be a sponge. Always learn and never say, I'm not going to say never say no, but if they, for example, if someone comes up to you and says, hey, we want you to do this, and it's not something that you were hoping to do, as far as, let's say, a character they want you to portray or they want you to do something in the match, and you're saying, nah, I don't feel like doing that. Instead of saying that, say, okay, but take what they give you and show them that you can do it, regardless of what it is. So basically, just constantly learn and don't ever think that you know everything. Because even the greatest minds in this business today, some of the greatest minds still understand that they're always learning as well.
definitely, definitely. All that's good advice, great advice right there. I like that you pointed out about, if they ask you to do something, do it. Because I remember talking to Santino, and he, talked about how like when they came to him about being an Italian, he was like, you know, they asked him, "Can you speak Italian?" Yeah, I can speak Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went and got like books or tapes it was, and started listening to tapes
Yeah.
on Italian language. And yeah, I mean, so uh, I love that he basically not lied, but like just was like, yeah, I can do it, when really he just had to learn it.
Right.
So, yeah, I love that. Great advice. Um, did you ever think when you were in WWE that there would come a time not only in the WWE but in the wrestling business as a whole, that there would be female referees. And then how do you feel like that has bettered the wrestling business?
I figured at some point there had to be female referees at one point, but I don't think the only thing that it's changed is people's perceptions that this is another wall that they have broken down. You know, because when I watch referees, when I watch wrestling right now, yes, I do notice that they're female referees, but it's not like oh, look, there's a female referee. To me,
Right.
they're just, a part of the show.
Mhm.
That's the way I look at it, and I think that was the goal to begin with. Because when I watch someone like a Jessica Carr or somebody like that, I just notice their work. I don't notice their gender, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So they look good doing their job. Perfect. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that they're there because they're just like anybody else.
Exactly.
Spot on the show. You know what I mean? If they're good, I'm cool with whoever it is.
So true. So true. What are your thoughts on the WWE ID program and how it will help the indie scene?
I think it's very interesting. I don't know deep into how it works, but if it's them helping out young talent in regards to advice, some training, some um, whether it's a little bit of financial support, which is always good, you know what I mean, for the talent, but it's a nice vehicle to have young people who are trying to aspire to get somewhere, some extra eyes on them as well, because
Yes.
now people are paying attention. They have people specifically paying attention to certain indie promotions and that are affiliated now. So this gives everybody more of an opportunity to possibly move ahead to where they want to go, what their goals are in the future. I know some people are a little bit weary of it, thinking that they're going to hoard all the indie talent. And what does it mean for them? I think um, it may limit where they could work.
Mhm.
And I don't know the specifics of that. I'm assuming that they would still be allowed to work independent dates the way they still do. I don't think that would change that. Let's put it that way. I have no idea how it affects them if AEW comes a calling. That's a different story altogether. But I can't speak to that because I don't know the parameters of that. But I think, in general, it's a good idea, and it's good that they're looking at indie talent, because for a while there was that NIL program that they had where they were looking at athletes and not
Yes.
people from the indies, but now they're looking at the indies, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great thing for the indie wrestling scene as a whole. Like you said, it puts eyes on these young talent out there and these talents that maybe otherwise would not have had the
Hmm.
WWE's eyes on them and
Hmm.
been prospects. And so I think it's really a great opportunity for people.
Hmm.
Um, and it just expands. It's crazy to see how the WWE developmental system has come this far,
Right.
and it's another branch for it. Again, me living in Louisville, I got to experience OVW when they were the OVW developmental.
Hmm.
Um, I started going to OVW in October of 2004, so I got to see a lot of the stars come be
Wow.
developed in OVW and come up to the main roster and everything. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's really cool to see how far the system has come
Absolutely.
up to now.
Yeah.
Um, what, in your opinion, does AEW need to do to be more of a competitor to WWE and give them possibly a run for their money?
Oh, you know what? It's funny because uh, it's easy to sit back and say they need to do this and they need to do that. One thing I think that from my perspective is stop trying to be a competitor and just have your own identity. At first, when they first started, they had a lot of buzz, they had a lot of eyes on their product, which is a great thing. Um, the sad thing right now is those eyes are slowly disappearing. Their numbers are dwindling, and I know a lot of people don't put a lot of stock in the rating system that they have. They're saying it's antiquated because so many people are cutting the cord and they're moving to streaming and stuff like that. It's still one of the only barometers we have,
Mhm.
especially for advertisers, as to how many eyes are on the product, and the biggest barometer is how many people are in the seats. I think the idea for them that dream match so and so versus so and so was one of the concepts that they have been doing for a long time, and it was working at first because people got those dream matches, but now they want to be invested in stories because that's what wrestling has been since day one. Like I said earlier, good guy versus bad guy, evil versus good. They need to tell more stories, but at a slower pace and take their time telling stories, as opposed to people, and that misconception that they don't have stories. They do, but they blow through them so fast.
Yeah.
They're done in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the story's done. Or they start a story and it takes a left turn for no reason whatsoever. And you're wondering, wait a minute, what happened to this story? All of a sudden, this talent is over here doing something completely different. They have to, focus on long-term storytelling, put someone in place in the head of creative who is a good booker.
Yes.
As opposed to someone who is, I'm not, don't get me wrong, not someone who is a fan, just a fan, someone who has been in the business and you have some great minds around you. You have Jeff Jarrett, you have Jake the Snake Roberts, you've had Arn Anderson, you've had Mark Henry, you have Dustin. Dustin is still there. You got these great minds. Utilize them as opposed to using others who haven't been there. And I'm not trying to say that people who haven't wrestled or haven't been in the business or haven't booked don't have good ideas. They do have some good ideas, but they don't know how to implement them in a way that would draw money. Like I could sit here and say, I could see so-and-so versus so-and-so down the road. Yeah, but how do we get there?
Right.
How do we make it interesting? How do we make fans invested in that story as opposed to so-and-so and so-and-so is going to have a 5-star match? Because in 2 days, that 5-star match, nobody remembers. Because it's just a flash in the pan. So they stick to long-term stories and stories that are meaningful, and put someone in place, please, that knows how to do that.
I completely agree with you. And then another thing, like I feel they have 2 shows. They have Collision and Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they need to do like WWE did back in the day and kind of make the rosters more defined, and because it seems like everybody's just on. Not everybody maybe, but there's no specific show that everybody's just on each show. There's no specific show. I think they need to switch the roster and make rosters for each specific show, basically.
That might be one way to go. The other thing I think that they could do too is they've got a lot of young talent, a lot of good young raw talent. Mm-hmm. They have a propensity to take someone that they say, okay, this guy's a blue chipper, he's going to be something someday, and they try to put him from from down here on the card to up here.
Yeah,
they tried to put him in a top spot too quickly without developing that character and getting people behind them, because all it is, look at it. I'll give you an example. I like him. I think he's really good. Kyle Fletcher. Mm-hmm. There's a great hand. Good. The guy looks like he could be a top tier talent one day. Now he's starting to gain some momentum because people have seen him regularly. They've built a little bit something with him. So people are starting to get him and get invested in him and his heel persona. If you take someone like that, instead of saying and start from the ground up, okay, he gradually works his way up, gradually works his way up, gradually works his way up. Now people are starting to get more and more and more invested in him. It's like storytelling in a wrestling match. You start off, you get people, you start here, you start to get the people invested slowly through the match. The more the match progresses, the more people get invested. At least you hope they do. Yeah. Same thing with a character. You got to do it. You can't come right out of the gate and go, okay, this guy was on TV maybe 3 months ago. Now all of a sudden he's supposed to be a big star.
Right. Make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's simple.
Now, how can fans find you on social media?
Oh, on social media, on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I don't call it X. Get off my lawn. What can I tell you? On Twitter, I'm at Jimmy Korderas. On Instagram, at Real Jimmy Korderas. And I also have you can find me on Facebook. I haven't moved over to the Blue Sky or the TikTok yet, but that may be coming soon. But you can find me there on all my social media platforms, doing my ref and rants every day from Monday to Friday. Just making little critiques, tightening screws that I think need tightening. And, look, it's my opinion. You can disagree if you like, but if you're going to disagree, do it nicely, or else you might get a snarky little Jimmy Korderas.
There you go. There you go. All right, fans, I definitely encourage you to go follow Mr. Jimmy Korderas on all of his social media.
If you don't mind, I gotta plug my other stuff too, man.
Definitely, that's what that will give you a chance to do that.
No, I'll let you do your stuff then. Go ahead.
So how can fans? Speaking of your podcast, how can fans check out Reffing It Up? And you mentioned you have another radio show as well.
Yeah, well, Reffing It Up with my good brother in stripes, I like to call him Brian Hebner. RJ is our producer; he holds the glue together. You can find Reffing It Up podcast and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We're out there, and we have great guests every week, and we have a lot of fun reminiscing about stuff, talking about what's going on today, and just it's a chill podcast, And when we have guests on, we don't play gotcha. We just tell stories. We have fun, and that's it. And Huge Pop Radio is the new project I'm involved with right now with a good friend of mine, Donnie De Silva, up here in Canada. In Canada, it's on TSN Radio, but it's also available on iHeartRadio and, again, wherever you find your podcasts on. And we have guests on. We have a lot of fun breaking down a lot of stuff, what we liked, what we didn't like from the week and stuff. But I encourage you to check them both out. Let me know what you think.
Definitely. I agree. Fans, go give both of these podcasts a listen to. Support Jimmy Korderas and Brian Hebner as well. And support Jimmy's other podcasts as well. And then, Jimmy, how can promoters contact you for their next show or wrestling convention to possibly make an appearance?
Oh, if you're interested, you can contact me either. Like, I leave my DMs open on my Twitter, so anybody can DM me, whether I'm following them or not. So it's easy. Or if you want to contact me via email, you can contact me at jim.corderas@gmail.com.
All right, promoters, I definitely encourage you to go reach out to Jimmy for your next event, your next show, wrestling convention. Bring him in and for appearance or what have you. And yeah, you won't be disappointed at all. And Jimmy, at this time, I definitely, again, like to thank you for coming on the Final Count Spotlight. You're welcome to come back anytime, sir.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan, for your time. I had a lot of fun. And if you run into that Daniel Spencer guy, don't say anything.
Thank you again, sir.
My pleasure.
All right, and fans, as I say every episode, we will see you down the road.